I spent $300 on an unreleased prototype PS3 controller from eBay, and in this video, we're gonna unbox it, test it out, tear it down, and I'll show you how it's different than a normal PS3 controller. Let's go ahead and open this box up, guys, and see what's inside. Here we go. Oh, I see it. I can see it. Dude, this thing looks so absurd. You guys are not ready for this. Dun, dun, dun. Oh my goodness. It's like it's got a hunchback. Holy crap, this is insane. Let's just take this step by step and check this thing out. So first of all, on the front, it looks like a normal PS3 controller for the most part. You can see we have a D-pad, which feels like a normal D-pad. We got our analog sticks, which are, wow, those are in nice condition. For how old this thing is, that's crazy. We also have a select, a start, and we have an analog button? Hold on. Wait a second. Okay, so we got some comparisons. We'll go a little bit deeper in this later, but I just gotta know for now. This is a DualShock 3 controller here. This is a DualShock 2, and as you can see, the DualShock 2 has an analog button, and this one has an analog button, but the normal PS3 controller does not have an analog button, it just has the home button. So, okay, that's weird. We'll get more into that later, but let's go ahead and keep going. We got our normal X, triangle, circle, square, normal stuff. On the back here, oh, the triggers are also just like a DualShock 2. Hold on. Okay, so another comparison point here. DualShock 2 just has the clicky buttons right here. It doesn't have the trigger like the PS3, 6-axis DualShock 3, that sort of thing has. So that's another interesting tidbit there. We don't have any naming here. We have a piece of electrical black tape here. Looks like it's covering something up, but I don't know what. Oh yeah, there's just like a hole right there, and it's just covering it up. Wow, that's janky. So guys, I actually figured out there's a secret under this janky piece of tape. Just watch this. Let me pull this back, and boom. There's a second mini USB port. I don't know what that's for. I would assume some dev stuff. I don't know, but I just thought I would point that out. Flipping to the back, we have this giant sticker that is peeling off that covers up not only just the little back here, but it kind of goes over the sides so that when you're using this controller, you kind of feel it on your hands. That's a nice little tingling sensation when you're playing FIFA. This device is being imported for testing, evaluation, or suitability for marketing only and not for sale. So yeah, in case you couldn't tell from the sticker here, this is a prototype controller that Sony used kind of between the PS2 and PS3 era to test out the PS3 controllers. I'll do a little insert segment here in the video and kind of explain a little bit of the backstory. So guys, let's hop over here to my PC and just talk a bit more about this controller, at what it is, what it's called, some details, and you can see here the eBay page where I bought it from. It is called the PS3 Alpha Rev 3 prototype controller. I know that's a mouthful. $300 is what I paid for it. Seems kind of steep, but honestly, there's not really many comparison points. Most of the info I found here is on this website called consolevariations.com, which is a very cool website where you can see all of the console variations, controller variations, that sort of thing. And you can see here, I guess the original or the real model number is, or model name is MSU Alps Rev 3. And Alps seems to be a company that makes like controller parts, like the analog sticks, things like that, as far as I can tell. And you can see here, this controller is actually the earliest prototype of the PS3 controller from like 03 to 05, which makes sense because it looks like a PS2 controller, and that's when the PS2 was big, obviously before the PS3. And then you can see this is basically, yeah, again, a transitional period from PS2 to PS3, and it was used on early development hardware, such as these model numbers here. And when I looked at these model numbers, I was able to find this photo posted by Obsolete Sony on Twitter of, I guess, one of the old dev kits, and this thing looks wild. It's just like, it even says codename Shrek, which makes sense because this thing is a behemoth. And then moving on, there's actually more prototype controllers that I don't have here. First of all, the infamous Boomerang controller that, you know, is this thing even in the wild? Who knows, but that thing is just crazy, kind of cool to look at. I also found this other one that looks very similar to a DualShock 3, but it has this red light in the middle, which normal controllers do not have. So that was interesting. Also, there's a PS3 developer wiki, which is pretty cool. And there's another one here that looks very similar, but it just also looks a bit different. And then when you look at these things up on eBay, there's just not many of them. Like you can see here, we have a PS1 prototype controller, PS4. The coolest one, honestly, that I found is this Uncharted 3 PS3 controller that doesn't look like a dev controller or anything, but it's very cool. It just doesn't exist, I guess. So yeah, just not much info out there about prototype controllers, but let's go ahead and move on and take a closer look at this controller some more. Now guys, a few more comparison points here between the controllers, and first of all, I've essentially come to the conclusion this is a DualShock 2 that's wireless. I mean, even the analog sticks are the same, like they feel the same. They look the same, they have the same resistance. You know how on PS3 controllers, the analog sticks are super loose. These are not loose at all. And then also, if you flip to the back, you can see just the shape of the back part is exactly the same, minus this giant battery pack thing that's right there. Just ignore that. But also, you know, if you compare that to the DualShock 3, you can see that just the shape is different, especially around the triggers up at the top there. So very interesting to see that this is basically a DualShock 2 that's wireless, I guess. Well, Weird. Now guys, let's talk about the feel of this controller. And as I mentioned, it's pretty much a DualShock 2, so it feels very similar to a DualShock 2, except for the fact that it has this massive battery bump thing sticking out the back, so it just jams into the middle of your middle finger, and it's not comfortable, guys. Like, if you're playing this for more than half a minute, it's gonna hurt. I don't quite understand it, but guys, let's go ahead and move on and try to test this thing out and see if we can get it to work. Alright guys, I got my backwards compatible PS3 plugged in and turned on. We're going to use this to test out PS3 and PS2 games, since this is basically a hybrid PS2 and PS3 controller. But let's go ahead and test this bad boy out and see if it works. So we have our cable plugged in. Let me just try to plug it into the back of this controller here and see what happens. Alright, so plugged in, it does nothing. Excuse me. Let me just make sure this cable is actually working by trying a DualShock 3 controller. Yep, cable works. I guess maybe it needs to charge or something. Let me just leave it plugged in for a little bit. We'll come back and see what happens.
A few moments later.
Okay, so this thing is charging maybe. I have a USB tester basically plugged in right here, and it shows me the current going through this. So when I unplug the cable, so yeah, right now I see 0 amps. And then when I plug it in, it's showing 0.04 amps. So it's doing something, although very, very slowly. Yeah, so I guess I'll just sit here and wait for a long time and see if anything happens. So guys, I had this idea that maybe I can use my thermal camera to point it at the controller and see if the controller is heating up at all, like if there's any electronics inside of it doing anything. So let's go ahead and try to do that and just see what happens. So guys, at first glance, I'm not seeing a whole lot going on here. Obviously, it's going to heat up the side because of my hand there. I think I see some reflections on the controller, but like, I don't see anything. Oh, actually, ooh, I feel like right there, right at the controller port, where it's plugged in, I see a little bit of heat. So that makes sense because that's where it's plugged in. So maybe it's definitely doing something, just not quite as much as it should be. So guys, I'm over here at my PC now because the PS3 just like, it wouldn't do anything with the prototype controller, just nothing. I have it here plugged into my PC, and the good news is it does appear to be showing up here. Let me just show you what it looks like. So basically, I have my device manager pulled up, and you can see we have game controller right there. And if I unplug the controller like so, it goes away. So it's definitely being recognized by the PC in some capacity. Now the next thing I want to do is go over to Steam here and basically hop into our controller. And you can see here as well, it shows up as a Bluetooth controller. If I unplug it, it disappears. So it's definitely being recognized. And I'm going to try to set this up and see if it does anything. So I want you to press the A button. When I press X, it doesn't do anything. Hello? Oh, okay. So clicking L3 got it to do something. You guys now basically get down to this D-pad left, and I can't assign anything or skip or literally do anything. So I pulled up this gamepad viewer thing to try this out as well, and this is, yeah, you can see I'm pressing nothing right now, but this is what it thinks I'm doing. So something's jacked up here. I don't know if it's just because it's a prototype controller or if just the controller itself is broken or what, but yeah, that's clearly not gonna get it done for us. But guys, let's go ahead and I guess back to the table, and I'll open this thing up and see what it looks like on the inside and see if we can figure something out. By the way, guys, I did try to plug this into the other USB port that you saw on the back of the controller, and this is what happens, just nothing at all. So now we're not sure where that's connected to. Alright guys, we're going to try one more thing before we open this controller up, and I have a PS2 console plugged in now. We're just going to plug in the controller and see if that happens to work, since this thing straight up is pretty much a PS2 controller. First of all, let me just show you that the PS2 is on and functioning. You can see a normal DualShock 2 works fine. Let's go ahead and unplug this. Now, obviously we do not have a normal PS2 controller plug for this controller, but we have USB ports on the PS2, so I don't know. I don't really expect much from here, but you never know. 3, 2, 1... I'm just kidding. Yeah, that does not work. Let me just press a bunch of buttons and see if something activates. All right, that didn't work. Let's open it up. All right, so it looks like we have 6 Phillips head screws here on the back. Let me just go ahead and try to pop these out, see what happens. Now for the big reveal. Dun, 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 dun. That was very anticlimactic. All right, so here on the back we have, it looks like just a normal plastic shell, and honestly, very clean inside. And yeah, we got our little triggers there, or not triggers, they're just the normal PS2 buttons there. And then here on the inside, we have this large containment area here. I would assume that's the battery. Yeah, we got 3 leads going to here to power something, so that should be the battery. I almost wonder if the battery's just like dead inside of this thing. But anyways, yeah, we got our analog sticks here. We got, looks pretty standard up there. And you can see up on the top, we do have our 2 USB ports. So we have one on that side of the board, and then we had this one right here that was covered up with tape. Now, something else interesting to note here is that the inside of this controller doesn't look similar to the DualShock 3 like inside at all. I mean, obviously there's no vibration motors. The whole trigger portion is completely different. The battery portion is completely different. Even looking at the inside of a PS2 controller, which you think would be similar, it's still much different. So definitely prototype here, just weird stuff. Let's go ahead and pop one of these circuit boards out. Okay, all right, so this whole assembly just pops out of place, and oh, that's interesting. Okay, so that looks like a Pretty standard circuit board right there for a controller. You can see all our buttons there, and our analog sticks are they're so clean. Even the mechanism there looks very clean. Of course, no stick drift at all. This thing it just feels like it's never been touched before. Interesting. Okay, so here on the front, we have a bunch of headers right here for something. They clearly don't connect to anything because those headers basically bump up against this plastic piece right there, which is not electrical in any way. Maybe they should have these headers here so you can, you're a dev kit owner, you plug some jumpers in there and connect it up to your whatever interface you're using to test stuff, and that, I mean, I guess that's how that works. Now guys, here's the problem. So we have two boards right here, and I can't really separate them because there is a string of cables. I don't even know if you can see that, but they're in there, and they're attached between the two boards. Or actually, that might be it's some sort of weird jumper between the two boards that's preventing me from taking them apart. And also, this battery pack or whatever it is does not come off without me prying it up with some tweezers or some pliers or something, so I'm not gonna mess with that either. So I think we're kind of toast at this point. But guys, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you know anything else further about PS3 dev kits, please let me know down below. Or if you want to buy this thing, I might put it up for sale on my website because I frankly can't do anything with it. But guys, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.